Hey Arpit, how are you doing?
Doing well, dude. It is the anniversary of our big World Cup win. So I think super pumped to be doing our first recording on this date.
Yeah, for sure. But were you in Bombay like 11 years ago?
I was in Bombay. I was in college. We were in our convocation hall with 2,000 people when we watched the game. How about you?
I was at Wankhede. I was at Wankhede.
What the hell, dude? I didn't know that you were at
Yeah,
Wankhede. How
yeah,
did
I was at
you not know
Wankhede.
this?
Yeah, I was at Wankhede. It was. I had come to India. It was actually a few months. I was traveling for work, and then I happened to be in Bombay, and it was a very last minute decision to go to the ground and try to buy tickets. And I thought at that time I was paying way over the odds for a ticket. Obviously, you could not get tickets officially. One of my friends had gone to the India-Australia quarterfinal in Ahmedabad. And he said it's by far the most tense atmosphere he had been in. And he was like, I cannot imagine a match that gets more. And then he and I actually went to try get tickets for the final. He was like, oh, this is too much for tickets. So I'm not going to buy. And I ended up getting a ticket. And at the halfway mark, I also remember thinking I have paid too much for this ticket. But
How much did you
thankfully,
pay? That was my first question in my head when you said
I paid 20K, 20,000 rupees
20K is
for a
not
ticket.
bad, to be honest, because the numbers I was hearing were
Yeah.
you have to pay 50K plus to get a ticket, and
Yeah.
on a student budget, I was like, bro, that's not happening.
Yeah. And obviously they wanted cash, right? There was no like
Oh yes,
Paytm, Google Pay at that time, so there was only cash, which also made it interesting. The cool thing was that I'd been to the renovated Wankhede before that, so for me, like it was even looking the ground itself was it took a while to get your bearings and all. As usual, it was unbearably hot. Food was still terrible. There was not enough, the other thing. But most of the time, your focus was anyway on the game, so it didn't matter. But it didn't feel as tense as even while I was watching other matches on TV, right? Whether there's India Pakistan or India Australia before that, it didn't feel that tense. In fact, at halftime, I think most people were like, "Shayad jaldi jana padega," right? Jayawardene like getting all kind of pumped up when he got to say when the way he finished the innings and all. So people were quite. I wouldn't say tense. They were almost like, "Okay, like there's less than 50% chance."
the weird part is after 83 came out,
Yeah.
you watch it with people of maybe one or two generations before you, and everyone says that, you know what, I remember exactly what I was doing on the night of
Yeah.
the 83 World Cup final.
Yeah.
And it is so nice to see that one generation or two generation before had that 83 World Cup win, and our generation, everyone has a story about what they were doing on the night of 2nd April 2011.
Yeah.
Dude, I clearly remember we won the World Cup, and this is college campus.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, we have to celebrate, aaj chal, bahar chalte hain, whatever. And then as we are leaving the campus gate, the campus watchmen are like, aaj jao, aaj pio, aaj, we will not stop you from coming in, because they would check if you've had.
Yeah.
And look, the funny part is we have this small bar out just opposite our campus called Lakshmi.
Right.
And that I think probably was the one and only night where I'd heard of Lakshmi shutting down because they ran out of alcohol. The floor was full of like students, and all we were doing from about I think 1 a.m. to until about 4 a.m. was singing any song which has India, Bharat, Hindustan, any semblance of patriotism in it. That song was sung by probably 50, 80, 100 drunk people there.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because the way people talked about 83, like it was almost like such a shock to people that we had won. And maybe also given like whatever, not everybody had television and most of people were listening on radio and stuff. Like I felt like the vibe was different. It wasn't like raat bhar jaake nachte hain types, right? Most people were like, oh, okay, kal, kaam pe jana hai types, right? But like 2009, I remember that night, like it was basically impossible to get out of the ground for good reasons. And then the entire Marine Drive was just like, it was just done. Like there was no way I was like, imagine trying to get home. There was like, it was funny because like by the time I got back to VT station, I took a train back because I was like, there's no point trying to get a cab. But by the time I got to VT station itself, it was like 1 a.m. and it was still empty. Most people were still outside and still and still partying the night. So it was phenomenal. And I think it's also interesting because um, we also won a World Cup in 2007. Technically, we won the first T20 World Cup. I wasn't in India at that time, so I don't remember the vibes of, how people celebrated in India at that time. But definitely, I feel like everybody remembers where they were when the including people who are not even in India, right? Even people who are living abroad, and even all of them have a great story to tell about. Okay, this is what I was doing, when Dhoni whatever hit the guy into the stands. At that point.
Awesome. Dude, I think we got emotional and jumped into our April 2 stories. Do you want to first talk about why we are doing the podcast and what we're going to be doing on this podcast, just in case we have one listener someday?
Yeah, look, I actually don't know. So I guess we've talked about cricket for quite a while. And in many of my drunken and sometimes non-drunken evenings, I've always wondered what it would be like to talk cricket with somebody on a regular basis. Right? It could be what's happening now or what's been happening as more of a macro trend, or the fact that many of us grew up through the 90s and 2000s watching cricket, and also other sports which probably influenced the way we thought about cricket and sports in general. Try and talk to somebody who has similar views, or at least in some cases has different views, to get their perspectives. For better or for worse, I think we played cricket once, but I feel like we've talked a lot of cricket, right? Both as one-to-one, but also with some other people. I remember talking during your wedding, even though you had more important things to talk about. It just came up as something that we both thought could be interesting to do. Yeah, like if there's more people who want to join, that would be obviously great, right? If there's other people who either listen to this or who listen to us talking about it and say, oh yeah, it would be nice to come along. And we obviously have very supportive and patient wives who put up with our with our love for cricket, and may it run long, as they say, right? Like I said, I'm just curious to discover what this is like. How about you?
Yeah,
What did
for
you
me,
think for when you?
it's exactly the same. We put in so much of our time just discussing random things about cricket, and the idea
Yeah.
is what would happen if we were to put it onto a recorded platform, and then
Yeah.
these two things someday look back at and
Yeah.
are discussing, and if there are other folks exactly out there who do the same and want to come in, chime in and say, guys, I completely disagree with the shit you were saying, and this is how
Yeah.
we should think about it. I would love it at one day somebody just randomly shows up and joins the conversation. Do you want to jump from one World Cup to the other, which we just miserably and sadly crashed out of?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I think the Women's World Cup will be obviously fun to talk about. I think the Women's World Cup is sometimes how they talk about men's football, right? Which is that football is a game played between 11 versus 11, and then Germany wins in the end. I feel the same way about Women's World Cup, which is, it's a game played between 11 and 11, and Australia / England in this case win in the end. Funnily enough, I found out Australia have never won the 50-over World Cup. So this would be a first if they actually manage to do it. But they have just been so dominant that most people are expecting them to win.
Oh, I didn't know that. I thought Australia were the last. Who did India lose to in the last World Cup final?
England.
Oh, that was England. Oh,
India had an amazing in the semi-final. They upset Australia, where Harmanpreet basically.
Oh, that was
she
the
played.
innings was against Australia in the semis. Correct.
Yeah. I mean, I always equate the Harmanpreet innings against Australia. They're different formats, obviously, as the Brian Lara innings against Australia in Bridgetown, Barbados in 99, 2000, whenever it was, right? Where it was like just one person who just came out and said like, "Aaj main karega" or "Aaj main karegi," right? In her case, right? It's like one of those. I'm not a good sports person, but I love thinking of what sports people go through. But I felt like on that day, she was just unbeatable. Like she was just like, today nobody can stop me. So that was a very memorable match. But yes, this World Cup has been disappointing, I would say. And as an Indian fan, I still think we have like some amazing talent. The one reflection I had was that the format that this World Cup has had was the same format as the Men's World Cup 3 years ago, and it is an unbeatable format. Like just the thrill of watching all 8 teams play against each other. The number of close matches that were there in this World Cup was just phenomenal. Like I loved watching Pakistan play. I loved watching Bangladesh play. I loved the way New Zealand, West Indies competed. It just seems, and the women's game, it's always been more thrilling because I think it's been more about like traditional spin. It's been more about batsmen who maneuver the strike and so on, not so much like just brute power. But now there are also like really powerful hitters. So I actually think there's been some good tactics on display. And despite how dominant Australia have been, I actually think it's been a very good format.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I would say I find the game of the women's game more thrilling per se. I
Yeah.
think because there's so much more years of tactics, strategy, and just pure training.
Yeah.
Has gone so much more in the men's game that the
Yeah.
quality of the game is higher. But I think having
Yeah.
said that, it's equally fun to watch.
Yeah.
Overall, and for me, the reflections on the overall tournament, I agree. Like we watched the World Cup in England,
Yeah.
the round robin, and I think that format is unbeatable. But I think for me, the one big disappointment was I was waiting for the result of the South Africa West Indies game before India was supposed to play their last game. And I was like, I just hope West Indies loses. That gives us a little more chance to go in. And when the worst thing that could have happened to us was what happened, which was a washout, and West Indies got that 1 point. Probably they could have gone ahead and gotten both the points for all we know.
Yeah.
I think India would have had a better chance with West Indies on 6 and India on 6 points as well.
Yeah, I agree. But even then, I still felt it was in our control, right? All we had to do was beat South Africa and we were through. I was very disappointed with the last half an hour. Coincidentally, I was in Bombay when that match was going on, and I was at a restaurant when those last 5 overs happened, and I just felt like we just disintegrated. I don't know why. The set batsman was there, but I still felt we had good bowlers, and they had to score at 10 and over, 9 or 10 and over for the last 7 overs, so 6 or 7 overs. So I thought it was very much in our reach. So I'm sure the players feel probably even worse than us, but it just felt like it was in our grasp. It was just
Dude,
it was
even
there to win.
the last over itself. And I think one thought I would love to add here is that this managing a crux situation right at the end is something that a women's IPL would build into the women. But they're like, because you've been through so many crux situations in the IPL, you tend to be able to be much stronger when you are again put in that position. In the last few overs of a World Cup, because we fumbled the game against Australia as well in the last over. It wasn't as close as the South Africa game, but Smriti had that misfield right in the end,
brain fade,
which got her back on strike. And just curious to hear if you agree that it's the IPL that changed things around.
So I mean, obviously the women's BBL is quite popular, right? And India does play. India does have all of their best players in there, and there are some fairly clutch games, as they call it in American sports terms, right? There are clutch moments in those games also. So sure, I agree that more experience would help. But I always looked at this Indian team and thought, good talent, but hasn't been in those situations enough, right? So I don't think like Sneh Rana or Pooja Vastrakar, even like Shafali Verma have been in enough clutch situations as batters or bowlers. It shows, right? The experience shows at the end. I don't know if the South African women had more experience. I don't know how versus India, but it did look. Sometimes I don't know. Sometimes India gave the same vibe as the South African men's team, which is like long conferences with 4 people, like before every ball, after every delivery, trying to change the field. I mean, it's easy to say now once you see the result, right? If that no ball hadn't happened, maybe we would have been like, oh, this is what happened in the semifinal or whatever. But it sometimes just gives away the vibe of a team, right? I could never imagine like a Dhoni, like, having a conference with 4 other players before every ball. Yes, he would talk to the bowler. He would put his arm around and so on. Same way, even the Australian woman, right? Meg Lanning is just a freaking machine. Like, I just feel like she has so much control over proceedings. It's almost she can slow things down to whatever way she needs. So you're right. Maybe it's just that experience of being in more of those situations. And I hope for that and many other reasons we have a women's IPL. I think even the short version they had with 3 teams, I think was quite successful and I attracted a lot of eyeballs. So I hope, and they what I read recently was that they are trying to bring one in. So I agree.
Was it successful? I thought the first version it did not attract as much attention they wanted, which is what gave BCCI the excuse to push out the women's IPL for a few years. Now finally, at least it looks like from Pakistan's pressure, BCCI has finally decided to have a women's IPL in 2023.
Oh, what was Pakistan's pressure? I
I
didn't
think
know this.
Pakistan came out and said that we are trying to put together something for
Oh,
the.
really?
Yeah, and I think
Okay.
Ramesh Raja, I don't know if he was bluffing, what he was doing. The whole concept of IPL was born because they wanted to snatch away the
Yeah, of course.
throne from England. And I guess they
Yeah.
did not want to see any of these dollars going to Pakistan.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. To your point on the first women's IPL, like maybe it wasn't like I just found it very like they were clever about it in that they would schedule a women's game and then a men's game afterwards, but it didn't seem as if the ground was completely empty and then got filled up for the match. I still saw enough. I only think there's more kids and more girls around when women are playing. I think that's an important part of what the demographic that I think we need to bring in India, right? And it's ironic for me because there are more women Olympians and more women gold medalists even in other sports, in both individual as well as team sports. Like we saw what happened with the women's hockey team in the Olympics, right? People went mad when they saw how they were playing. I just think cricket is such an underappreciated one. I can't remember whether cricket is part of the Commonwealth Games this year or not. I know there is a Commonwealth Games, but I can't remember. But if say we manage to win a gold medal there, I mean, movies aside, there will be
Right.
quite a lot of following if you actually manage to do that. All in all, yes, it is disappointing, but I don't think we're far away from winning a World Cup, right? As the Indian women's team, and hopefully, there's another chance to rectify it with the Commonwealth
Yeah.
Games, right?
Have you tracked a lot of the Pakistan Australia series?
I have been reading. I have not been watching it. The first two Test matches felt very back to the 80s. The last one just felt Pat Cummins and in Mitchell Stark in beast mode. And then the one days have been, I guess, interesting. I only saw the score line for the second one last night, and I didn't realize it was some crazy chase and all. Have you been watching it closely?
Tracking the score pretty
Yeah.
regularly. Again, a lot of my cricket information comes from Twitter, so it's through a lot of memes.
Right.
The one meme that I'd seen was they'd just shown this really flat, long road, and they're like, "This is the pitch in Rawalpindi," with absolutely nothing for the bowlers in there. I think the one or two things that stood out for me was I kept wondering why is Pakistan producing these flat pitches
Right.
when for me, minute I think Pakistan, I think great bowlers, right? And I'm like, why would
Yeah.
a country which is known to produce such good fast bowlers produce flat wickets where you're not giving a chance to
Yeah.
execute that fast bowling? But then when finally Paddy Cummins and Mitchell Stark showed what Pakistan bowlers used to do there, I realized
Yeah.
it's more the reverse swing than like conventional seam and swing on the first few days in Pakistan that decides it.
Yeah. I mean, I have to say, I feel very underprepared whenever we have to talk about Pakistan because I didn't realize what good batsmen they have also. Like, I didn't realize Mohammad Rizwan is like a gun. He's an absolute gun. Like Babar Azam is obviously like poetry in motion, right? And he's already spoken in the same level as like Williamson and Kohli and Root and all, but I think he's getting there. And there are some other good ones, yeah. Like, even Imamul Haq, but that's the thing. I know only these three, four names. And on the bowlers, I actually don't know. I only know the 2020 versions, right? I only know the Shaheen Shah
Afridi.
Afridi, and then I know who's the guy who was very good in the BBL,
Suddenly,
and then no, Hassan Ali nahi. There's the other guy, yeah. Again, bowls quite quick and became famous because of the BBL, and then has now come to the Pakistan team. But again, another fast bowler, and then all of their spinners who they have, right? But I actually don't know the composition of their Test bowling lineup and why they were less effective than Australia. Like I don't have a I don't have a
yeah,
good
yeah. I think
run
the
of
same
it.
way for me. It's just some cricket info tracking that tells me that
Yeah.
okay, Babar Azam scored another century, but that's pretty much it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dude, one
Yeah.
one funny thing that I'd seen was I'm not sure if you've seen Hassan Ali's traditional celebration.
Yeah.
He does that.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you've seen. He actually injured himself doing the celebration.
Against Zimbabwe.
Yeah, in Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
And Hassan
Yeah.
Ali came out and started whacking the ball. I think he hit a 4 or 6, whatever, like 2, 3 balls in succession, and then fourth ball out. Okay, he went for a
Yeah.
wild swing and knocked his
Yeah.
shots over. And then
Yeah.
David Warner, who was at I think Silly Point, he goes ahead and does the explosion celebration right in his face. And David Warner is this little compressed kind of a guy who, even when he expands, is not very
Yeah.
tall.
Yeah.
Seemed like a very scene right out of an animated movie when David Warner tried to replicate that celebration.
Warner is interesting, right? Like there was another clip that went viral of him when it was, I think, the first test when Australia were on the field basically for like 2.5 days. Everybody was getting bored, so like there was some music playing in the ground, but Warner started like dancing and like he started getting the crowd in, right? So he used to be called the whatever the bull terrier or whatever in the team. But I also think he has this soft side from the subcontinent. Like there's famous videos of him dancing to like Telugu music. Him and his entire family, him, Candice, and all of the kids like dancing to like Telugu music and stuff. Still think he's the first guy to like lose his top when like the going gets tough, and he just reverts to his like when they say right when you get backed into a corner, your most primal instincts come out, and his primal instinct is to get in people's face and try and sledge them out and so on and so forth. So
One one thing that I think I was curious about your thoughts. I'm forgetting which test it was, but think about 30 overs left or 25 overs left. You are seven down, and you cannot win the game, even though the target is about 130, 150 away. All you can do is try and save the match. And I think after the sixth wicket, every single Pakistani batsman came out all guns blazing, and like
oh
yeah, were literally throwing their bat at everything. And I'm like, I understand if you are like a finisher in your team, and if you're a pinch hitter or if you're an all-rounder, but tailenders coming out and trying to whack Patty Cummins, Nathan Lyon on a fifth day pitch, you get 2, 3, 4 balls. If you're lucky, you'll get 15 balls. But if you're expecting to be able to do what Bumrah and Shami did on the Lord's fifth day pitch, I think that's a one in a century kind of a situation where Bumrah and Shami can't believe that they actually pulled that off. Why aren't tailenders just trying to actually play the blockathon? Why just not try and block out and genuinely try and save the match?
If you don't trust your technique, or your thinking is that I don't trust my technique, so I might as well just get value for anything I do. That's probably number one. I think now number two is again maybe he's just not being in enough of those match situations, right? So I can imagine if the other side the batsman was like a top order batsman, like he would be losing his top and just saying, "Boss, just stay there at one end and just block the ball." So maybe if you have two tailenders, both of them like are panicking, so they are both adding to each other's panic, and one guy sees the other guy whacking and thinks, "Okay, let me also do that." If I can be a bit kinder, like maybe it's also throwing the opposition off their game, right? Because I mean, even Australia, if there's a couple of good overs, if you end up scoring 15, 20 runs in 2 overs, then you're like, oh, wait a minute, like we don't want a situation where it's 4 overs, 20 runs to get, because then do I attack or do I defend? So to give the tailender some credit, maybe they are doing that. Like there is a long-term thought in my head in terms of like, is cricket gonna go the direction of baseball, which is like, people who have extremely specialized roles and you come in actually because this is the only thing you do. Test cricket, that's never going to be the case because you kind of need to have all skills, but 2020 seems to be moving in that direction. The reason I'm saying that is also because sometimes, bowlers who might feel a bit more confident because they've developed these other skills through 2020 feel like they can come and show that skill in test cricket. And because there's less of that fear of, oh, it's like 10 overs, like what are 80, 90 runs, they might still feel like they're equipped about it. I don't know. Did you think of what they did?
I think for me, it's surviving one more ball. And I think the risk percentage you're putting on by taking on a Patty Cummins and trying to whack him over, you're just increasing the risk percentage. Fine, I agree your technique is bad, but I think you're not being any safer by trying. I would rather want to see at least some intent in trying to block it out. Ashwin played out the entire day.
He did.
Ashwin has incredible technique. He's like one of the South Indian batsmen who like, hey, I don't care if you're a bowler, you have to have technique. So I think if that's what he can try to do, I'm not sure why someone else cannot attempt to do that. Maybe they just gave up at 7, saying if we don't lose in 5 overs, we probably lose in 15. So might as well go enjoy it.
The only other parallel I can think of is like, I mean, not totally a parallel, but like Brisbane, India, Australia. I guess Rishabh Pant was there. But did you ever think like, guys, just forget about it, play it out? Or did you always think, no way, let's just, like, we have to go for this at this stage? And the other one was also Adelaide, right? Kohli's first test as captain. Those are the only two parallels I can think of.
Yeah, I think
you think in those situations?
Puji got out, that's when I was like, okay, guys, let's increase the percentage of a draw for a little bit. Maybe just play out 5-7 overs so that we cannot lose the game. But I guess, that's why he's there and I'm sitting here chatting with you.
Yeah. True. And because like I also remember heartbreaks like what happened in Sydney in 2008 where we lost, I don't know, 3 wickets to some random Michael Clark over. And, same way Adelaide was just such a heartbreak, right? Like I felt like we were so well set up to win that game. And then just half an hour of madness just got us.
I still remember it used to be, I think, 7 or 8 p.m. my time when it started or something. So India was going to, I think Shami and Bumrah were playing out bowling, and I was like, dude, Shami's on fire. He's going to whack the Australia tailor, and then I'm going to order a nice pizza in. I'm going to sit. I think it was a Friday night or something. I'm going to sit, enjoy my test cricket after a long time. Dude, my pizza didn't arrive. India was fucking all out, dude. Like, India was all out before the pizza arrived, and I'm like, kya hai yaar ye? Like, I wanted one night of like a chill Friday night with test cricket batting.
I have to angrily go on Twitter and abuse the entire world about. Yeah, I know. Like I said, that's in India does do, especially overseas. I felt that way after the South Africa series also. I was just like, how did you?
Bangladesh went and won against them.
I know.
Same team.
I know. It blows my mind, right? And they look like a good team now. I mean, they're struggling a bit in this first test, but the one days they played really well. Like it was convincing wins. It wasn't like a South Africa collapse and, just Bangladesh. They bowled really well. Like Taskin Ahmed bowled really well. The batsman Shanto looks really good. They've got a very good team. So yeah, I just think sometimes you're right. These half an hour or 1 hour moments of madness can just define an entire series, right? It's funny.
Did KL Rahul captain us in South Africa?
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
He did.
Yeah.
So he did. I just think our batting didn't turn up. That was the issue, right? Rohit Sharma was obviously injured and didn't travel at all. And Kohli had decided he was going to step down or whatever, right? So, it ended up being KL Rahul. And we played well in the first test. Ended up, because of that first day, the way we played the first day, we ended up winning. And then after that, it just became a sad. I mean, the third test was like just embarrassing. Like, it just the way we completely lost our heads. And the way they made the second innings batting look versus how we made it look. We scored 250 as if we had just killed Everest. They scored 250 like, they were taking a walk on the beach. And then obviously there was all this shouting into the the stump cam and all that. Things just disintegrated basically, right? Kind of sad. Sad way to end the captaincy also, but sad way to lose the series as well. Basically.
I completely missed the saga. So I know the saga around the Virat Kohli captaincy where it started from the T20. It started from the T20 setup where
T20 World Cup. Yep. Just before the
came forward and announced that I won't be captaining, etc. And then the ODI captaincy removal was something which he says he was not told about. He did that very big press conference where he said, okay, I was not consulted. I understand the rationale behind removing me, but I deserve a bit more respect when removing me. But I don't know what happened after that as to what made Kohli not be a test captain. I completely missed that part.
He decided in the South Africa series, I think. So I can't remember if he decided. I definitely have to go back. I can't remember if he decided after the second test or the third test. But basically he decided. And in the first test he was injured. He couldn't play. That's why KL Rahul took over as captain. And then he just decided after the series that he didn't want to continue. I think the seeds had been sown though with the way he announced his T20 captaincy exit, right? Because before a big tournament, right, before the World Cup, I don't see any upside in you coming and announcing that you want to leave the captaincy, right? If it just ends up destabilizing the team, and what are you doing, man? Like, just keep the focus on the team and winning the game, winning the tournament, right? Like, there's no reason to, keep the focus on you. But I'm sure that's not what he intended to do. But the story became about him. And then obviously the ODI captaincy, there's differing versions where he said he wasn't told, and the selector said he was told, or whatever. So. I have my views on his captaincy overall itself, right? We've discussed this, but I don't think he is a good captain. I think the thing he did was he set in place good structures, right? So the emphasis on fast bowling, the emphasis on 5 batsmen, right? Like he's brought that in. But again, like we spoke about clutch a while ago, right? Like in clutch moments, I just the what I see with Rohit, I just don't see with him, right? Where he allows the players to be, he manages to just tide over tough situations. I just haven't seen enough of that, and it's unfair to characterize his entire captaincy like this. But you know, we lost in Adelaide. He left for the other test. We ended up winning the series. Even the Australia series in India, Ajinkya Rahane was the captain for like a crucial test match in Dharamshala. We ended up winning. The series was at a knife edge at that point, and we that series could have gone either way. And yeah, like South Africa, it was our best chance to win in like a generation, and we managed to like screw it up, right? So I think all, and then same even like the ODI World Cup, right? I just think we managed to screw up a perfectly winnable situation against New Zealand because of 1 hour of madness. So I think the structures he set up together with Shastri were great, and that's going to serve us well for a long time. But I think he was done as a captain. That was my take, at least.
Talk more future captains. So I think there are 2 or 3 contenders out there. One is KL Rahul.
Okay.
I think they're also trying to groom Rishabh Pant as a future captain. But
yeah,
I think one person who's stood out in the first few IPL games for me has been Shreyas Iyer. Phenomenal decision making in clutch situations, getting the best out of the players he has on the field, being more proactive as a captain. I think that's the third candidate, and I would probably throw in a fourth candidate into the ring is just because Patty Cummins has come out as a good candidate. I would probably also want to put Jasprit Bumrah into the mix. So what are your thoughts on who you see leading India in like the next 4 or 5 years?
I mean, I was quite worried about the test team in particular because I didn't see a good pipeline of who could be captain. I'm less worried about the shorter format. I think there's enough certainty about who should be there. I agree with like all 3 of your choices. Bumrah, I just think is very untested. So I'll start with probably the easiest one to talk about. He's just untested. I know he's got probably a leadership role within the bowling group, right? But to what extent can he translate that into leading the entire team? Also, is he going to play all the tests, right? That's another thing. He's an all-format bowler, and they managed his workload and so on. So is he going to actually be bowling and actually be captaining in all formats, let alone tests? That's another question. And I can't remember if he's had a serious injury since he came to since he became a regular in the team, but what happens if he does? But I think as a captain vice captain combination, like the idea of one of Pant or Iyer and him sounds very appealing. Now with the other 2, Rishabh Pant is a very interesting choice. I think exudes just so much just positivity. Like I sometimes wonder if Virendra Sehwag had ever been Indian captain, how would it have been? And I sometimes look at Rishabh Pant and think, yeah, that's probably the closest. Like he's up to wisecracks. I feel like he's like a guy's guy. He's the guy who's looking for like Indian restaurants wherever you go. Very very relatable, like kind of down to earth guy, but a precocious talent, right? Like just game changer, right? And so on. So for me, the thing about him is that he will go through patches where his batting doesn't work because he can't turn off that switch in his head, and that's probably why even Sehwag wasn't captain, when he was in the team. So if he becomes captain and you have a long stretch where his batting just isn't clicking, because he's a different keeper to how Dhoni was before. So if his batting isn't clicking, then would it affect the way he captains the team and so on? In that sense, I think Shreyas Iyer is a much safer option, right? I 100% agree with whatever you've said in the limited time I've seen him with Delhi Capitals before and now with KKR. His decision making has just been quite phenomenal. Even for somebody at his age, I feel like he's able to manage and marshal senior bowlers, batsmen around him quite well. Seems to appreciate the tactical side. I don't know how good he'll be for like a longer format like tests, but he's only played in India so far in tests, so still yet to be tested. But I think he's quite promising from that standpoint. And then last thing is, it's a minor thing to say, but I just think he's fitter than Rishabh Pant. Like just has to be put out there. So one of the things again, like in terms of just setting up long-term structures, right? Kohli did that, right? He made no compromises on fitness. I do think as much as we all love Sharma ji, right? Like I do think we need to make that a priority for the team, right? You do need bowlers who don't break down. You do need batsmen who can bat long and bat strong. So I do think from that point of view, Shreyas Iyer probably is like one notch ahead of Pant, right? Despite Pant being a keeper and having to keep the whole time.
Yeah, I think for me,
what's your
I
sense?
have yeah, I would probably rule out Bumrah as well, not for the reason that he's untested, but just purely for the reason that
Hmm.
I can't have doubts on selecting my captain based on how much rest he needs to get. It's just bizarre how few test matches Bumrah has played at home, given the kind of talent he is.
Yeah,
Like, our country should be seeing him on our own
yeah,
grounds. So I think I would also rule Bumrah out pretty quickly. The
yeah.
second toss up between Pant and Iyer, I have somehow
Mm,
I agree with you that he's a likable guy, Pant. He pushes the team,
mm,
but I don't see how he could command the respect of players
mm,
across
mm.
different maturities. I have a
Styles. Yeah.
Sachin and a Ganguly in the dressing room, and I have
Mm,
someone who's
mm,
coming from the under 19 ranks. Me being
mm.
able to imagine a situation where Pant is holding respect across all of these generations
Mm,
in his decision making. I just don't see that happening
mm,
somehow with him. That's the problem
mm,
with being
mm.
that guy who's the wisecrack of the team. Versus Shreyas Iyer does
Yeah,
exude that sentiment that okay, he knows what he's doing.
yeah,
I'll enjoy more playing under Pant, but
yeah,
I think I'll
yeah,
do better if I were playing under Iyer.
yeah, yeah. And what's your take on like split captaincy versus, one captain
Yeah,
across
I
formats?
don't. Not thought about it much. I think I agree with the sentiment that white ball and red ball need to have different captains.
Mm.
I think
Yeah,
it's more
yeah.
about how dynamic can you be in that situation. That changes very quickly.
Mm,
So, for example, I would love the
mm,
Kohli intensity in a test match
mm,
where that
mm.
is, I think, absolutely
Yeah,
needed to go for the kill in the 5 games.
yeah,
But I would rather
yeah,
have more of the Sharmaji quick critical decision making in
yeah,
clutch points in a T20 format. So yeah, it's still being tested, right? Because we haven't seen great
yeah. It
all
is. It
format
is
captains
results.
apart from Dhoni
No.
emerge yet. I think
Yeah,
Smith was a great
yeah,
candidate, but Smith's T20 game itself
yep,
has gone down so bad that I think they can't
yep,
select him. Who else do you think would
yep.
have been a great all format captain of people?
Yeah, very hard. I mean, and teams who are trying split captaincies aren't doing that well as well, right? Like think of England right now in tests versus like non-tests. Like South Africa again, it's like a Dean Elgar, and then you have like Temba Bavuma and whoever, right? So again, like they seem to randomly lose or win test matches. Like when New Zealand seem more stable with Kane, right? Like these again undroppable. But again, he now has, for example, believe it or not, New Zealand are playing a series right now with Netherlands at the moment, right? In New Zealand. There's actually an ODI series going on between New
Actually, I
Zealand
did
and
not know
Netherlands
that.
in New Zealand.
Oh God!
Yes,
And Saudi,
yes, yes,
Williamson, everyone's
yes.
here.
They're all
Nisham,
in the IPL, exactly, right? Lockie Ferguson, they're all here, right? They're all here for IPL again, obviously. And who's there? The captain, the left-handed
Conway,
opening batsman. He's the guy who's captaining. No, no, not Conway. Anyway, I
Latham.
should know this, but I don't. But Tom Latham, correct. Tom Latham, correct. Tom Latham is captaining them. They were actually in a spot of bother today. They were 32 for 5. And then this is a one day match, and they still got to 246 and then bowled out Netherlands for 145. So it could have been like egg on their face. So they're up 2-0, 2-0 in the series. But you're right. Like it's very few multi format or one format, one captain across all formats. And it's always
Is
hard,
that a
especially.
function
Yeah.
of teams not giving it a try, or is it a function of not finding candidates to do it? So is South Africa having a split captaincy because they can't find someone who's undroppable across all three formats?
It's there's always this philosophical question, right? Do you select the 11 best players and then select the captain from there, or do you fix the captain and then put the players around it? I think Australia very famously has always said no, captain is captain, and then let's put the players around, right? And it's worked or not worked for it. They carried Mark Taylor for a while. They carried even Steve Waugh when he was like out of form and so on and so forth. I do think now with the volume of cricket that's being played, you have to consider, who is going to be most fresh and able to lead the team. And look, I mean, you might select the same player across 3 formats, but just tell the guy, look, you're not going to play every single test match. So we don't think you should be the test match captain, right? And the last one is, of course, how much say does the captain have in selecting the team? So, in Australia at one point they made like the captain like this demigod, and may probably put too much on the captain to also decide on everything from including what brand of water should they be drinking and what hotel should they be staying, right? So I also think you have to take all of those demands into account. So it's hard, but I just think with the volume of cricket and franchise cricket now also being played, right? Like I just think it's impossible for someone to feel fresh and wake up every day morning and I'm going to captain India in this game against who? Like, oh, again, there's some random series we're playing with Sri Lanka now. I have to go and tell the whole team that we have to do well. And so I actually think it's a more practical choice to have split captains. But again, it's there has to be a project, right? You have to feel like, okay, it's building up to a World Cup or it's building up to a World Test Championship or something. Otherwise, it just feels like you're going through the motions over and over again. Before we finish, I remember you were telling me about your experience umpiring a game. So I definitely wanted to talk about that.
Okay, so we have this league where you put into like tiers of platinum, gold, silver, etc. And you have to go umpire for the other tier so that it's sort of neutral umpires.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
Umpire responsibilities across all teams. And within the team, we rotate umpiring responsibilities. And it's something which you don't want to do. You don't want to wake up at 7 a.m. on a weekend and go umpire a game where you don't know any of the 22 on the field. But I think the first big thing was it was surprisingly fun. It was fun to wake up, have your cup of chai, and then go watch a game of cricket from the best seat in the house. If it's not as dud a game, it's actually not too bad. Unless you have like other priorities in life. But I think I enjoyed that morning. I should not tell this to my team, otherwise I'll get far more umpiring duties going forward.
Yeah. Or to Radhika too much like you.
But I think the overall experience was fun. 2 or 3 awesome things that you first figure out, right? One is there are these certain kind of players who try to appease you. Okay, I don't know you. I don't know who you are, but they'll be very nice to you. I'm pretty sure they're not even this nice to their own friends. They just randomly are nice between overs. Like at the break, he got me some bananas or some pani. Like they just okay. If there is a decision that's on the margin, he might just vote in favor of me because I'm the nice guy. The 2 or 3 controversies I should tell you about. So the first thing I found out was we have a power play rule, but there was one guy in the deep.
Okay.
So he was already one of the fielders allowed outside the circle, but he was 3/4 from to the boundary. So there was still some area behind him. And the batsman, after he hit the ball, he comes to me and complains that this guy, after the bowler starts running in, he's walking back. So first of all, I'm just confused as to why a fielder would walk back. Okay, like I've seen people charging, but what's the sentiment behind walking back? Which I later found out in the game. He was like, I want to make the boundary seem smaller initially so that he goes for it, but then I can walk back and take the catch if he actually goes for it. Which was smart enough. But what do you think the rule is of walking?
I actually thought the rule is the same about walking in or walking back, that after a point you have to hold your position when the bowler has started the act of bowling a delivery or something. So it is the same even for like a wicket keeper or like a slip fielder moving. I thought so. This is just me. It's just me using part common sense and part what I think might be in the rules. What is the answer?
At least the generic MCC rules are that a fielder can only walk towards the batsman in the line. Right? So and I was like, this is such a subtle nuance, and why is it coming up on the one day I can come out to umpire? Because he's like, no, you can't walk backwards, you can only walk forwards towards the batsman.
But everything works the other way in the US anyway. You drive on the other side, so you can be like, you can actually walk, you can walk back, you can't walk forward in there.
So that was one
kind of thing.
Yeah, that was one big controversy. The second controversy that came with regard to no balls. So this was where me and my leg umpire had a dispute. So when you call a waist high no ball, so he kept calling the waist high no balls based on point of impact. So if I swing my bat in front and at a point of impact the ball's above my waist height, he was calling on that. And my understanding of the rule was you have to understand the trajectory of when the ball would have crossed you as a batsman, assuming you are in a reasonable place within the crease. What is your thought on that?
But firstly, it tells me that there are a lot of waist-high full tosses that are bowled in this league as a way of either keeping the batsman honest or because you're too tired and you're like, forget it. I'm just gonna flick the ball at this guy. So clearly, it has come up enough times to make a decision. I kind of agree with your square leg umpire. I thought it was about like point of impact when the batsman meets the ball. Because I don't think there is. I thought there wasn't this hypothetical line you draw or the hypothetical trajectory you project. I thought it was more simple. It's just like, when you hit the ball, did you hit it? I always thought it was what's the answer?
The rule is the trajectory. You have to path the trajectory.
Really?
Where it would have crossed the batsman if the batsman was just standing in the neutral position. The point of impact does not matter.
Right.
When it crossed the batsman, would it have been below or above the waist?
I have a more basic question for you. Like, how easy is it to judge front foot no balls?
Front foot no balls is very easy to judge if you are not judging in LBW.
Yes.
So
yes. Okay. So I guess you don't have LBWs in this form.
So
okay,
that makes it easy because I think you have enough time to look down, and these guys are bowling at probably 60, 70 kilometers an hour. Look down, take my head out, have a sip of chai, and then see if the ball reached the batsman or not. I think it wasn't as bad, and there is no video replay to confirm if the umpire was bad at calling no balls. I think, and plus the run-ups that most bowlers have is very conservative because we're not trying to get that extra yard to the batsman. We're just trying to avoid no balls. So people are bowling like almost right next to me when that. So it was very.
But did you actually read up on stuff like the popping crease? Do you have to be like can you cut the side? Because there are always these little what is 2 bouncers per over? What is considered a bouncer?
And it was not because I was going umpiring, but just because I was curious. Like these rules, I like to know offhand generally.
Yeah.
I think the tournament itself has set some rules. They say we follow all of the MCC rules, but there are some rules we will change. They actually, for example, if you heard about the new rule change about crossing.
Yes.
Yeah, so the league has actually implemented that. They're very quick to follow all of the MCC rules. Where now, if you hit the ball in the air and you get caught, crossing doesn't matter. The new batsman has to face the strike unless it's the end of the over. So that was kind of the second controversy. And the third controversy that we had, and people get really emotional during the controversy. This was probably the biggest trial. This guy hit it towards square leg and took a run, and the square leg guy threw the ball to the bowler. And the bowler had his hand right in front of the stumps. And what I saw was that the bowler knocked one bail out with his hand in trying to collect the ball. And he completely missed the ball. But the ball then went and dislodged the second bail. So my eyes saw ball dislodge bail.
But the first bail had already been dislodged by his hand.
By the bowler with his hand. I said, I think it's out. The whole batting team is like up and furious. They're like, this guy backed the stump out of this thing. And it is very tricky to explain what I saw because it's such a small nuance that no one will believe that, this is what exactly happened. So I said, look, I saw ball hit bail, and for me, that is out. So I'm assuming that is still the law, right?
That is the law. That is quite clearly. That there's no gray area here. It's bigger law, which is that it's the umpire's call and just shut up. Whatever the umpire, that is the main law. But specifically in this situation, I think that I'm 100% sure that is the law. So obviously, one team did not take you out for a beer.
No, I think my controversies were split across teams. So I think both walked away unhappy.
Okay. So what do you get for being an umpire? A sandwich?
Dude, nothing. Just
anything?
The right to not need to umpire for the next few months.
Right. Okay. Fine. But it sounds like you might do it again.
No, I will behave as if I didn't like it and I'm doing a favor or by me. But inside secretly I might just be happy doing it.
Yeah, I do hope all of the people who play with you listen to this podcast. You're gonna get nice. I've never been an umpire, so it's fascinating. I mean, for anything official, when I've played this whatever 8-a-side indoor cricket, there is umpiring required. That
This
has
reminds
its
me of a
own
really funny
has
story
its own set of.
when I decided to go work for KKR.
Uh-huh.
So we're meeting a group of friends, and this couple walks in, and someone just tells them, you know what, the upcoming IPL season, Arpit's going to be working for the IPL. And they're like, oh, that's cool. What are you going to be doing? And I just felt like joking around, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to be an umpire in the IPL. They're like, what? You can go and be an umpire? And I'm like, yeah, haven't you seen? You don't see like international level umpires in the IPL. It's like local people. And they're like,
Anybody.
okay, so how did you get through this? I'm like, well, there are tests, and I made up an entire umpire selection procedure on the spot. Okay, I'm like,
I own a
I
hat,
gave some
like
written tests first where they checked if I knew the rules. Like they quiz you on the rules. If you pass that, then they show you videos of live of batsmen batting, and you have to judge them whether they were LBW. And then you go and umpire in a few practice games and give a few tests. And if you pass all of this, you actually get to be a junior umpire. And that's how I got through it. And they totally bought into the story and were absolutely stunned. But as is with most friends, the first thing they were like, "Bhai, tickets milenge kya?"
Yeah, you should be like, I'm looking for a couple of, people who stand on the side with those extra balls and they need to bring them in. So can you you have to also go audition for that, right? Like there's like a 6-month selection. You should have just made them walk around with a box of balls and made them run around like for a while just to see if they could do it. Oh, that's super funny, man. Like the things people will believe.
Do you want to end today's one with a few random rapid questions?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, I'll start with one. Who is one player who, even if he plays well, you absolutely hate the guts of him and you're like, I wish he wasn't playing well? India. Rapid fire, dude.
I don't know. I was just going to say Manoj Pravakar for some reason. That's the first time I could think of.
No contemporary answer?
Okay. I just like everybody, man. Like I can't think of anybody I don't.
I asked you this because I have a big answer.
What's your answer?
Stick to Ambati Raidu, dude. I just don't like that dude.
Oh, true. You're right.
The other day he was playing pretty well, and I'm like, why is he playing well? I don't like him. Like even when he was in Mumbai Indians, and I'm a Mumbai Indians fan, I just somehow his attitude and the way he...
Have you seen the video of him? Have you seen the video of him arguing with a guy on the road? No, forget Bhaji. There's a famous video of him where he's driving a car. Obviously, he's driving a Lexus or something, and some guy cuts him off on the street. He gets out and almost thrashes the guy in front of everybody on the street, right? So he's
close to the Hyderabad, like close as in he used to follow cricket in Hyderabad very closely. He said Ambati Raidu was going to be sort of the next UV or the next Azharuddin. It's just his attitude and anger issues that have not let him take off. I can ask you one random innings that you keep watching on replay forever.
Well, I watch a lot of Kevin Peterson's first ever series that he played for England against South Africa, the one day series. I think he really revolutionized how to think about batting and how to even think of constructing a one day innings. So I've watched that quite a few times.
Dude. My answer is just Sachin and Sharjah. Like for me, I can just watch that reel. I don't know how many times with Tony Craig in the commentary box.
That's a great answer. That is a great answer. Like I don't watch it often enough.
My new favorite actually is slowly becoming the day 5 of Gaba and day 5 of Lords.
Actually, you put me onto the Hindi commentary as well. That note, rapid fire, best commentator among the current.
Mark Nicholson. Mark Nicholas.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, good answer. Why do you like him?
So for me, it's 3 parts to any commentary, right? One is sound cricketing analysis. I want to hear a broader perspective of where the game is heading, like a strategic perspective. Nicholas does a good job of bringing his personal insights. Second is pure respect and interaction with other commentators. So he does a very good job of asking probing questions or pulling in other people along the way. And third is just, I think with any commentator, I like to have like a soothing voice with a deep baritone. I've told you, if I ever need my autobiography narrated, I think it's going to be Mark Nicholas.
Yeah, you told me this.
What about you?
This is Mike Atherton. Like, I actually love reading what he writes also. I just find both his style and also his take on the game to be extremely balanced. I know the Sky Sports Cricket broadcast team comes for a lot of flack, and I personally don't like a couple of the other people they have, but he still maintained his dignity in the 100 2020 big bash era. I still think he's a classic. I don't think he would be good at commentating on England, New Zealand 2019, or even Sharjah for that matter. Mark Nicholas, I think, could not have reached Tony Greig's heights, but would have probably reached to some extent, been able to create that excitement. Catherine, I just find him to be the most the most balanced and also the most cerebral of the commentator.
Cool. This was
fun.
So much fun, dude.
Yes, this is so much fun. There's I can already think of 15 other things to talk about for next time, but yeah, this has been really good fun.
Thanks for this, and I think we should definitely make this a regular thing, irrespective of if our
100%.
listener count remains at 0.
Let's do it. I'd love to get more of the gang together.
Let's do
Thanks
it.
for doing this,
Awesome.
man. I'm looking forward to the
Have a
next
good
one.
rest